Inaz and the Two Unmarriageable Lovers. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This story is narrated in 4 books. Book 1. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real love story of 2 unmarriageable lovers. Therefore, all names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. Chapter 45. A long trip by the Dehradun train. The persecuted lovers who had been recently excommunicated from their church, Joseph and Inaz, have arrived at the New Delhi General Railway Station after an exceedingly long trip, which took them through many towns and villages. Their train is the slowest means of modern transportation in the whole world. The average Indian train covers the distance between Bombay and New Delhi in 24 hours, but their train took 37 hours. The express train Rajdhani can cover the same distance in a mere 14 hours' time. But the Dehradun train is like a slow animal such as a donkey or a camel, which halts at every stop. Sometimes, that train stops in the middle of nowhere and picks up poor villagers who just wave their hands at its driver. Only the so-called low castes and untouchables travel by that turtle-like reptile. The unjustly persecuted married couple Joseph and Inaz have become so poor that they could not afford to travel by any other train except the Dehradun train. Before her apostasy, Inaz used to receive every month 21,000 Indian rupees from her family. Every month, her father used to deposit $300 in her overseas bank account. After her so-called abominable conversion from Islam to Christianity, her outraged Muslim father stopped sending any funds to his apostate daughter, who defied his authority and married an uncircumcised infidel Christian pig. As a matter of fact, the pride of her Muslim father had been seriously injured when his pseudo son-in-law Tariq Haroon al-Ajabo phoned him and conveyed to him the real reason behind his daughter's apostasy. He told him that his apostate daughter forsook the beautiful religion of Islam and accepted the corrupted and distorted religion of Christianity because she fell in love with an uncircumcised infidel Ethiopian student who is called by the Sudanese student Sayyidina Yusuf al-Jamil. He further said, because of her infidel Christian husband, she refused to accept him as her lawful Muslim husband. She spat on his face and told him to go he and her Muslim father to hell. The African boyfriend told his father-in-law many lies about his former Arab girlfriend. His evil scheme is to instigate the Muslim father against his apostate daughter Inaz so he should come to India and slay her in another honor killing. As a consequence, immediately the extremely outraged Sudanese father contacted his daughter's medical college and withdrew his financial support of her study. When he was asked by the college authority for the reason of discontinuing his daughter's medical education, he said, his daughter did something disgraceful, and for that abominable deed, he disowned her and declared her an infidel woman. According to his blessed Islamic Sharia law, she deserves to be killed as an apostate Muslim girl. Then, the wrathful father swore by Allah that he will never allow his accursed daughter to continue living with the uncircumcised Ethiopian pig and give birth to a bastard and infidel child. It is Tariq who lied to him and told him when Inaz came and quarreled with him. She said to him, she has already been impregnated by her handsome Ethiopian Christian husband. The father told him he is going to travel to the Muslim land of Pakistan and smuggle himself through the Kashmir border and enter India and come to Bombay and rip off the haram baby out of his daughter's womb and dash its head against the wall. He also threatened to kill his accursed apostate daughter and her unclean and uncircumcised infidel pig husband. After he came to know the reason behind her apostasy when she came with her extremely beautiful Christian husband, the fake Muslim husband became a bitter enemy of his former Arab girlfriend. The Sudanese students used him as a deadly weapon against his Muslim wife. They convinced him not to allow his apostate Muslim wife to continue her adulterous relationship with the Ethiopian Christian dog. Therefore, Tariq traveled with his contemptible cousin Khalid to Pune, and through paying under-table cash, he got a copy of his first pseudo and sham marriage with Anaz. He paid a huge bribe to the same imam who conducted their first marriage in Pune city. With money, you can buy the Wizard of Oz in India. After that unpleasant church meeting in Mr. Vijay Alexander's office when Anaz and Joseph were declared unlawful couple and asked not to come again to the church, their enemies began to plot against them. The fake Muslim husband Tariq was instigated by his despicable cousin Khalid to lodge a police complaint against the unlawful marriage of his Muslim wife with her Christian husband. Therefore, the so-called lawful Muslim husband of Anaz went to an Indian Muslim lawyer and lodged a complaint against his wife who got married to a Christian man while she is still his lawful Muslim wife. Then, Tariq Harun Alajabo demanded that the Indian court issue the verdict of obedience against his rebellious and adulterous wife Inaz Ahmed Silla. The Muslim lawyer told him, the Indian secular system cannot force a woman to live with a man, even if he is her lawful husband. In other words, he said to him, there is no such a law called the verdict of obedience or the house of obedience against the rebellious Muslim wife in Hindustan. Nonetheless, the Muslim lawyer informed Tariq, the Indian law may prosecute his Muslim wife for her violation of the law of marriage by marrying another man while she was still bound by another marriage. But he said such a legal dispute between a Muslim husband and his disobedient Muslim wife may take years before the secular court passes its judgment on it. The Indian court may ask her to pay some money as a fine or nullify her second marriage with her Christian husband, but it may not send her to jail or force her not to live with her Christian boyfriend as conjugal partners. When that possibility of bringing the rebellious wife through the verdict of the court has been blocked, the despicable Khalid tried to convince his cousin Tariq to go to some Indian gangsters called Gondas and pay them some money and ask them to kill his Muslim disobedient apostate wife Anaz and her Christian pig husband Joseph. Nevertheless, Tariq refused to do that because he is afraid of being involved in a double murder crime and landing in jail and spending the rest of his life behind bars in a foreign country. He knows her Muslim father will sooner or later smuggle himself into India and come and kill her as an apostate girl from Islam and an adulterous Muslim woman who married an infidel Christian man, which is an abomination forbidden by Islam. For the African lover, religion has made his beautiful Arab girlfriend Inaz an unclean infidel, adulteress, and apostate girl whom he wants her to be slain by her dangerous Muslim father. So, instead of her savior, Tariq became one of her conspirators and murderers. The Christian husband of the persecuted apostate girl, Joseph Abraha, is from an Ethiopian middle-class family in Addis Ababa. He receives from his family every month a check of $200. So, with that little money, the married lovers are facing serious financial problems. They could no longer afford to pay the rent on their apartment in the good area, which is called Bandra. Consequently, they vacated their apartment and moved to an extremely far place on the outskirts of Bombay. It is a poor area known as Virar. They occupied a poor habitat called a chawl, which is like a small hut. Only the Hindu untouchables such as Harijans and Dalits live in huts in that slum area. From Virar to the Churchgate area in Bombay downtown, where their medical college and the International Students' Hostel are located, the couple needs to travel by local train for 2 hours to reach over there. While they were living in the Bandra area, they used to travel to their college for 20 minutes by a slow train and 10 minutes by a fast train. There is no fast train from Virar to Churchgate. Despite the high risk, the couple continued their medical study. Unfortunately, Inaz received a letter from the registrar's office of her college informing her that her Muslim father stopped sponsoring her medical education in India. She then told me if she wanted to continue her medical study, she has to find another source for paying her tuition fees. Inaz informed the registrar's office that she has no one to support her with financial aid except her Sudanese father. Accordingly, her enrollment as a medical student was cancelled. The college refused to refund her the $15,000 her father paid when he registered her. Even the $10,000 which he paid as a bribe to the principal of the college, the corrupt Indian man denied it. Therefore, the poor apostate Inaz has become a mere housewife. But her husband Joseph continued his medical education alone. That is the sad condition of the persecuted couple when they traveled from Bombay to New Delhi by the Dehradun train. Their train made 72 time stops in railway stations and several halts between stations. It reached New Delhi after 37 hours. After they got down from it, the slow train has to travel for another 5 hours to reach its final destination at Dehradun city. Chapter 46. Applying for refugee status. Joseph and Inaz have been forced out of their painful sleep by the deafening noises of the new passengers who are forcing their way inside the already crowded Dehradun train. The ear-piercing screaming can bring decomposed corpses back to life. The persecuted couple might have missed their final destination if they had not been violently and rudely awakened and jolted out of their heavy slumber. When Inaz and Joseph got up from their sleep, they did not find their bag. Even their shoes are gone. So, the destitute couple has emerged out of that slow beast train without their luggage, and both are walking barefooted. Luckily, they are not deprived of their little money. They are feeling sick and experiencing nausea. They spent a very rough night, sleeping like chickens hanging on ropes. They slept on the hard wooden seats. Joseph and Inaz remembered their comfortable journey to Goa city when they traveled for their honeymoon and compared it to their hellish trip by the slow Dehradun train. The unjustly treated couple by everyone have almost wept when they recollected their past happy journey by a luxurious fast bus and contrasted it with their current miserable trip by a slow train that meant for poor Indians. Inaz at last had convinced her lover to travel with her to New Delhi and assist her in applying for refugee status. After she lost her seat at the prestigious medical college at the University of Bombay, Inaz understood that she will not be able to renew her permission to stay in India. Her student visa will expire by the end of the current academic year, and she must produce a letter from the college registrar's office showing that she is still enrolled in her medical program. Without such evidence, the Bombay police will not renew her permission to stay in the country. In that event, she will be deported against her wish and sent back to her country of origin. In addition to that, as an apostate from Islam, her life became in imminent danger. Moreover, her stay in India has become meaningless without anything to do. India does not permit any foreigners to work in the country due to the high unemployment rate. Due to those reasons combined with the serious financial problems the persecuted lovers are facing, Joseph agreed that his beloved Inaz can try her luck and apply for refugee status. Acquiring political asylum in India is the same as someone winning a lottery visa to the USA. In a few months, the refugees' papers will be sent for resettlement by the UN office to one of the embassies of the USA, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. Actually, the refugee status has more advantages and privileges than the American lottery visa. Firstly, the resettled refugee will be given a free air ticket by his host Western country. Secondly, his spouse and children will get visas and free tickets too. He also can apply for his parents, brothers, and sisters to join him in his new paradise. Thirdly, upon their arrival in their new promised land, the land that flows with honey and money, they will be provided with free accommodation for 1 year. Fourth, they will be supported financially by the government of that Western country for a full year. In addition to that, they will receive free medical aid and legal aid. None of those wonderful free benefits are available for the person who won the American lottery visa. The apostate Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Sulla has an extraordinarily strong case for being accepted as a refugee in India. Firstly, she cannot return to her country because she apostatized from Islam. As an apostate Muslim girl, according to Sharia law, she is supposed to be put to death in any Muslim country. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Whoever changes his religion, kill him." Secondly, an attempt to kidnap and send her to her country had been plotted inside her Sudanese embassy and carried out by 2 Sudanese diplomats with the aid of 10 corrupt Indian Muslim police officers. Those 2 diplomats and the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood at present are in remand in a Bombay jail awaiting their final trial. Inaz has an official letter from the Bombay Criminal Investigation Department detailing that hideous plot. Also, she has many articles from the main local newspapers in Bombay mentioning the names and occupations of the perpetrators of the evil scheme of her kidnap and transfer attempt to Sudan. Thirdly, her Christian husband Joseph Abraha had been badly battered by 5 Sudanese Muslim terrorist students when he confessed his love with her and that he took her to his church. She likewise has an official letter from the Bombay anti-terrorist police to prove that cowardly terrorist attack against her Ethiopian lover. Fourth, Inaz had received many life threats through anonymous letters that had been sent to her via her medical college's address. Of course, Inaz was also verbally attacked by many Sudanese girls and boys. Some Sudanese girls spat on her face when they met her in public places, but without eyewitnesses, she will not be able to prove such verbal and physical persecutions. Fifth, because of her conversion from Islam to Christianity and marrying a Christian boy, Inaz had been rejected by her Muslim family and disowned by her Sudanese father. Her outraged father stopped supporting her financially and stopped paying her college tuition fees. Due to that, Inaz had been kicked out of her medical college at the Bombay University because she can no longer find anyone to sponsor her education abroad. She cannot be allowed by the police of Bombay to live in India without being enrolled as a female foreign student in any college. The only way she can prolong her stay indefinitely in the country is to be a refugee in India. Upon their arrival in New Delhi and before traveling to the United Nations office, the persecuted couple took a rickshaw and requested its driver to take them to a place where they can buy affordable shoes. After covering the nakedness of their feet by buying cheap 2 pairs of slippers, Joseph and Inaz took another rickshaw and went to the UN office. Then, they stood on a long queue of miserable foreign people who are likewise want to become refugees in India and subsequently get resettled in rich Western countries. Most of those prospective refugee applicants are Pakistanis, Afghanis, and foreign students from poor African lands and war-torn Arab countries. It took Inaz and Joseph 3 long hours to reach the window where the apostate Muslim girl requested to be accepted for refugee status in India as a persecuted female foreign student whose life is in imminent danger. During that long time, they stood under the blazing sun and unbearable heat. They were given a huge application form that contained many necessary and unnecessary questions. They took an exceedingly long time to answer those difficult questions. The application form of the apostate girl is supported by a huge dossier containing detailed information about her problem and her person. She has then been given a date for her interview, which will be conducted by one of the legal representatives of the UN. She has to come back after a week to attend her interview. Inaz tried in vain to shorten her stay in New Delhi. She informed the UN office that because of her conversion from Islam to Christianity, her father stopped his financial support, and due to that she is struggling to survive in Bombay. As destitute husband and wife, they are searching for pennies to meet their daily basic needs. As a practical example, she said, some good Indian neighbors allowed them to use their refrigerator to store food and cook on their electric stove and wash their clothes in their washing machine. She also gave many sad stories explaining their miserable situation, which is similar to that of poor Indian people, but all her tales fell on deaf ears. She has been told there are hundreds of applications for prospective refugees submitted prior to hers. Chapter 47. In search of a shelter. The first serious problem the poor lovers are facing is finding accommodation in New Delhi. They have come with the possibility of spending a day or 2 in a cheap place in the capital city of India. They are hoping to be allowed to stay at a lesser charge in the Young Men Christian Association. But now, they do not have that much money to spend 1 week in that Christian lodging center. They also cannot afford to return to Bombay and come back after 7 days. The Dehradun train may take more than 1 week to take them up and down. Besides, they don't have enough money to purchase extra tickets. Finally, the poor lovers decided to go to the YMCA and beg its management to accept their little money and allow them on a charity basis, as destitute brethren in the Christian faith, stay for 1 week, and if possible, they should feed them too. Joseph and Inaz offered a short prayer to their good Lord before they left the building of the United Nations and ventured into the crowded streets of the metropolitan city. Unfortunately, the couple came to New Delhi at the wrong season of the year. It is during summer when the terribly persecuted apostate Muslim girl Inaz Ahmed Salah has come to seek a refugee asylum in India. If you want to visit hell for a short time and witness how the sinners are tormented for their sins, then visit New Delhi during summertime. The temperature will climb up to 50 to 55 degrees Celsius in summer. In the capital city of India, summer is long, extending from early April to the end of October. There are no air-conditioned buses. There are no local trains with special compartments reserved for ladies, only like the case in Bombay. The buses are always filled to the brim. Many times, the bus arrives while it is completely full, stuffed with passengers like sardines in tins, having no room for new travelers. And the driver of such a crowded bus does not bother to either stop to pick up new passengers or drop those who want to get off. In that case, against your wish, you will be taken to the last station. Then, you need to find another bus to take you where you wanted to get off. To save money, the destitute couple decided to travel by local transportation to the YMCA. Their little budget cannot allow them to travel by rickshaw again. Traveling by taxi is out of the question. So, after a few fully loaded buses passed without stopping, the couple managed to force their way inside an exceedingly jammed bus. Violation of the woman's privacy is an unheard of concept in that cosmopolitan city. As soon as the pretty foreign girl Inaz entered that crowded bus, she is groped by many wandering hands. Her body has been fondled all over, and her husband can do nothing to stop those sexually frustrated males from violating his wife's privacy. Some men touched her breasts, and other guys reached her big buttocks and began to enjoy them. If her husband tries to protect her big backside, her breasts and private parts will be exposed, and if he hugs her from the front, her large buttocks will be uncovered. Also, the extremely handsome Joseph himself became a sexual target for the sexually frustrated and lustful Indian homosexuals. Therefore, before reaching their final destination, the beautiful Sudanese girl Inaz and the extremely handsome Ethiopian boy Joseph have been almost raped in broad daylight inside the packed like eggs in the box of that double-deck bus. Unfortunately, they found the YMCA was completely full. Moreover, the management told the couple it does not have the budget to offer charity to the needy and poor Christians. Disappointed and discouraged, Joseph and Inaz decided to seek the help of some southern Sudanese Christian students. It was a mere coincidence that day they met at the UN office a couple of Sudanese asylum seekers who are Christian students from South Sudan. One of those students gave them the address of his apartment in New Delhi and requested them to visit them before their return to Bombay. So, the homeless couple decided to go to the place of that Good Samaritan and request him to give them free shelter and food for 7 days and 7 nights. Chapter 48. A one-time meal called "The Train Has Started." After going through another hellish ride in one of the filled to the roof of the Babylonian bus, the destitute couple reached the apartment of the kind southern Sudanese Christian student. At first, they thought they have come to a motel of African foreign students. Inaz and Joseph have never seen such a crowded apartment before. Their destiny took them over there. The place is called the Southern Sudanese Students Hotel. It is not a hotel, but some Southern Sudanese students gave it that name because it is a free shelter for everyone looking for accommodation and cheap food. The apartment is rented by 4 Sudanese Christian students, but not a single day passes without having 15 to 20 students from the south of Sudan spending their days and nights in it. The 4 tenants are Sudanese students studying at the University of New Delhi, while the rest of the occupants are visitors from other cities or universities of India. Those outside visitors are like Inaz, refugee seekers. They spend days and sometimes months on the waiting list before their cases are decided upon. Eventually, for every asylum seeker, his application will either be accepted, rejected, or left undecided upon. It is more tolerable if your application is rejected than left undecided. The applicant of the rejected case has the right to appeal his case, whereas the applicant of the undecided case will be expected to supply more evidence to strengthen his weak case. No matter what new evidence the asylum seeker may provide, his case will always remain the same undecided. Those Sudanese Christian students will tell you, the only way to strengthen a weak case is to ask a Sudanese Muslim terrorist to hammer you and leave you half dead or kill you. This may sound like a silly joke, but not for those asylum seekers with hanging cases. A southern Sudanese girl with a weak case asked her Christian boyfriend to beat her all over her body with a stick. While she was shaking and bleeding all over her body, she was rushed by her boyfriend to the UN office. Her boyfriend who beat her claimed that she had been attacked and brutally battered by 3 bearded Sudanese Muslim students in her own apartment when no one with her. Then she had been rushed by the UN office in an ambulance to the nearest ICU of a hospital. That clever Sudanese girl was flown in less than a week to Canada as soon as she was discharged from a New Delhi hospital. The Southern Sudanese Students' Hotel has 2 rooms and 1 toilet. The single toilet is as filthy as an Indian public washroom. There is nothing in the entire universe filthier than the Indian public washroom. The only places which have public washrooms are the local train stations. There is no kitchen or dining room in the so-called Sudanese free-of-charge hotel. There is neither air conditioning nor a fan. 2 of the tenants have girlfriends. One girl is a Southern Sudanese student, and the other girl is an Indian nurse from Nagaland state. Nagaland is a state in northeast India. Naga people look like Chinese rather than Indians. Each couple occupied 1 room. The 2-bedrooms apartment is not a part of a building. It is like a house that has a compound. The outside visitors always sleep on the ground of that compound. The sleepers have neither beds nor cots nor mattresses nor bed sheets. There are no pillows either. The out-of-station visitors have to use either their shoes or their clothes as pillows. The destitute lovers spent their first night in that free hotel in the compound surrounded by other 14 visitors. Inaz is the only female sleeping in the open. Joseph remained awake for a long time before finally fatigue and sleep overtook him too. He is worried that his beautiful wife, being the only female in the compound, be victim to one of those companionship-starved, sexually frustrated male visitors. His fears arose from the time they came in and saw how those male visitors are staring at the sexy body of his lovely wife. Nonetheless, his wife's and his sleep were every now and then interrupted by the relenting heat of the extreme temperature and humidity of New Delhi's unmerciful summer. Their bodies were tortured throughout the night by the bites of thousands of mosquitoes and other bloodsuckers insects. They were also visited by rats and lizards. Their painful sleep in the Dehradun train was 1,000,000 times better than their first night in the Southern Sudanese Students' free-of-charge hotel. The second serious problem the poor lovers faced is the food. The hotel offers its visitors only 1 meal in the day. If any visitor wants to have a second or a third meal, then he has to go outside and purchase it out of his pocket. The meal will be served sometime between 2 to 4 p.m. If any visitor comes after the meal is served, he can eat nothing until the next day. That single meal, however, is not free of charge like the accommodation. 2 or 3 of the visitors or tenants will go around collecting cash to prepare the meal. Everybody contributes according to his heart or his budget. Then the collected money will be used to buy meat, bread, and vegetables. They always buy the cheapest meat in the market. The cheapest meat in India is that of the domestic water buffalo. The buffalo meat needs to be boiled in hot water for a couple of hours before becoming chewable. After that, oil, onions, salt, and vegetables will be added to it. The vegetables are either potatoes or okra or both. There is one kind of dish prepared every day in the Sudanese hotel. That dish is called in Sudan, "The train has started." The name was given to it due to the fast way and unskilled way the food is cooked. Only male bachelors cook their food in that hurried way. The single meal will be served immediately after "The train has started" is cooked on a stove. A huge tray will be brought out of one of the 2 rooms. Then the cooks cut the bread into small pieces and place them all over the tray. Every day there must be different new 2 cooks. They are called the cooking team. Each and every visitor is expected to join one day in the cooking team during his stay in the free hotel. There is no kitchen and hence the food is cooked in one corner of the compound. Then, the cooks take the cooked curry and pour it entirely into the tray. Sometimes, if the donation collection is good that day, a salad of tomatoes, onions, and cucumbers is made and also poured into the big tray. Now the cooking team must go around and invite the visitors for the single meal of the day. Most of the visitors will be standing in front of the outside door and discussing politics or staring at the pretty Indian girls who are walking on the streets. Some visitors will be sleeping in one of the 2 rooms. The 2 rooms are considered private places at night and become common property during the day. Due to the torture of the night, caused by the heat and bloodsuckers, some visitors get a chance to sleep during the day. Other visitors will be either roaming around the hotel or sitting in a nearby public park. The way a single meal in the day is consumed may be considered unhygienic or very disgusting to those people who are not accustomed to the way Muslims eat their food. Although those southern Sudanese students are all Christians still, they are influenced to a large degree by their counterparts northern Sudanese Muslims. More than 17 to 20 students gather around that tray and eat their single meal. No one uses a fork or a knife. His hand is his fork and his teeth his knife. Therefore, the more you eat fast, the more you eat enough quantity to quench your hunger for the 24 hours of starvation. You are like the Muslim person who fasted during Ramadan for 24 hours and now he is breaking his fast. And here the competition becomes ruthless. Everyone wants to eat as much as he can before the big common tray is emptied. Each one knew and understood that there would be no second help. It is one-time deal. I mean to say one-time meal in the day. Therefore, one needs to be smart and eat a huge quantity as the cow does. For those who are not in the know, the cow has 4 stomachs and undergoes a special digestive process to break down the tough and coarse food it eats. When the cow first eats, it chews the food just enough to swallow it. The unchewed food travels to the first 2 stomachs, the rumen and the reticulum, where it is stored until later. When the cow is full of this eating process, she rests. Later, the cow coughs up bits of the unchewed food called cud and chews it completely this time before swallowing it again. The cud then goes to the 3rd and 4th stomachs, the omasum and abomasum, where it is fully digested. So, each visitor in the Sudanese free hotel has to fill his tummy with the biggest possible quantity of food because he is not going to eat again until the train has started. Meal is cooked on the afternoon of the following day. Chapter 49. The interview at the United Nations office. Unfortunately, the UN legal representative who is assigned to look into the undeniable strong case of Anaz is a Muslim woman from Bangladesh. Her name is Salma Muhammad Ahmed. Many Muslim men go by the name of Muhammad Ahmed. It is one name, though it is a combination of the first 2 names of the Prophet of Islam. She is a married woman who is living with her husband and 3 children. So, that Muslim married woman is known in the UN office as Mrs. Muhammad Ahmed. She does not like it if someone calls her Mrs. Muhammad or Mrs. Ahmed. She is a religious woman, and she loves her Prophet Muhammad more than she loves her husband, and she loves her religion more than her 3 children. Therefore, she felt deeply hurt when she read the case of the apostate Sudanese girl Anaz Ahmed Silla. The huge dossier Anaz had submitted as supporting documents contained some media articles written by Hindu journalists who are bitter enemies of Islam. Therefore, Mrs. Muhammad Ahmed felt offended when she read that her darling infallible Prophet Muhammad is called by those Hindu idolaters, fanatic prophet, child molester, child abuser, child rapist, notorious womanizer, murderer, invader, rapist, robber, bloodthirsty prophet, and founder of a bloody terrorist religion. She took it as a personal insult and determined to take revenge on the apostate Muslim girl who, through her abominable apostasy, gave the sworn enemies of Islam tools to attack and ridicule her beautiful religion and beloved Prophet Muhammad, who is the master of creation and sent by Allah as mercy to mankind. Therefore, Mrs. Muhammad Ahmed anticipated that, if she rejects the undeniable case of Anaz, the apostate girl will appeal and contest her unacceptable decision. The UN office, in that instance, may assign another legal representative to look into the rejected case and accept it. Therefore, the Muslim legal representative woman decided to block the chance of the accursed Sudanese girl for appealing her rejected strong case. As long as her case remains undecided upon, she will always be allowed by the UN office to handle it. Joseph and Anaz spent 7 long days and nights in that miserable Sudanese habitat, which is not fit to house domestic animals such as goats, chickens, dogs, and donkeys. It is worse than a maximum security prison in the Third World where prisoners are starved to death. During that time, they went through many problems and suffered so much. But, for the sake of her urgent case, we should bypass them and go directly to her interview in the UN office. This time, the Christian husband Joseph has been invited by the female legal representative to attend the interview of his Sudanese wife Inaz. Usually, the asylum seeker will be asked to come all alone for his interview. An exception can be accommodated if his spouse and children are also foreigners and applied for refugee status. In the case of Inaz, she is the sole seeker of refugee status. If she becomes a refugee in India, then she can stay in the country until her Ethiopian husband completes his medical education, and after that, they can apply for resettlement in a Western country. On the other hand, Joseph has no legal grounds to apply for political asylum because there is no fear for his life if he returns to his country of origin, Ethiopia. Mrs. Inaz Ahmed Silla, or Mrs. Abraha, the pretty female legal representative, began her interview. "My name is Salma Muhammad Ahmed. I have been appointed by the United Nations office in India to look into your case and interview you." The Muslim woman paused, and when Inaz has said nothing, she resumed. "I have carefully studied your case and found it to be an extraordinarily strong and genuine case. I sympathize with you, dear Inaz." "Thank you, ma'am," Inaz spoke happily. The opening words of the female legal representative sounded to the persecuted couple as an approval to the case. They felt like they read her thoughts before she spoke to them out. They concluded that the second statement of the pretty lady will be, "I have approved your application, and I have granted you a refugee status in India. By the way, as soon as the applicant has been approved, he is entitled to receive monthly financial assistance from the UN office. No matter where he is living in India, he must receive each month through the mail a check with a reasonable amount of money for his living and accommodation. I always have compassion with persecuted people like you. I also know that you may be killed as an apostate girl from Islam if you return to a country ruled by fanatic Muslim leaders like the terrorist group of the Muslim Brotherhood." Every word that is coming from the lips of the beautiful woman has filled the hearts of the miserable lovers with more hope and joy. They just want her to say, "Your case has been approved." Moreover, the troubles you had faced and also the dangers you may still face in future in Bombay have strengthened your case and made it hard to reject. Now the two intimate lovers became 100% certain that the case has been already approved and Inaz has become a refugee girl in India. But unfortunately, Mrs. Abraha, you are a married woman and have an Ethiopian husband. If you happen to be a single girl or have a Sudanese husband, our office would have accepted your case on the same day had received your application. What difference it makes if her husband is an Ethiopian and not a Sudanese? Joseph asked with his teeth clenched to each other. Have patience, Mr. Joseph Abraha. Let me finish my explanations. Joseph wanted to speak further, but somehow controlled himself. Because your wife has a Christian husband and because there is no fear for your life in your secular country, then you can take your Sudanese wife to Ethiopia and there you live peacefully and happily. But my husband has not yet completed his medical study. How can the UN office expect him to leave his medical education in India and return to his country? Inaz spoke with anger filling her heart. At least he can send you to his country to live with his family and visit you during his summer vacation. You cannot tell us how we should live our married life, Joseph shouted impatiently. Mr. Abraha, please mind your words. No one has told you how to live your married life. I am just giving you some options to help you to solve your problem. You are complicating my problem and making it more difficult, Inaz responded in anger. Listen, Mrs. Inaz Abraha, I am not your marriage counselor or your religious female advisor. I am your female legal representative. My job is to help you sort through your options. If you do not have alternatives to solve your problem, then the UN office can accept your case and grant you a refugee status in India. So, that means you have rejected her case, Joseph said angrily. Have I said that? Did you hear me saying that your wife's case has been rejected by the UN office? That is the logical conclusion of what you have told us. That is your conclusion and not mine. Yes, you have to tell me either my case is accepted or rejected. Inaz has spoken those words which have sounded to the angry Muslim woman, Mrs. Muhammad Ahmed, as challenging her authority as her female legal representative. Therefore, they have made her despise her with more bitterness. That decision is not mine to make. My duty is to write my report after interviewing you and refer your case to the senior officers in our UN office. They, and not me, have to make the final decision in your case. Okay. Can I tell you why it is not safe to take my wife to my country? Why not safe? Is Ethiopia also a Muslim country which ruled by fanatic Muslim leaders like Sudan? Inaz has mentioned in her application, her Sudanese father had come from Sudan to India and tried to kill her when he heard a rumor his daughter had married a Sudanese boy without his knowledge and consent in Pune City. But why didn't her Muslim father come now and tried to kill her when he heard she had changed her religion and married a Christian man without obtaining his permission or consulted him? He would have come and killed me if he could, Inaz said. But because his name is blacklisted by the Indian government, he couldn't get a new visiting visa to India. Why should the Indian government blacklist your father's name, and how did you know that? Inaz wanted to answer that question, but she suddenly remembered that Mr. Vijay Alexander told her not to tell anyone such a piece of classified information of the Indian police. She is also not supposed to reveal to anyone the friendship between the head of the Criminal Investigation Department of Bombay Police and Mr. Vijay Alexander. A friend of mine had phoned me from Khartoum and told me about my father's visa rejection. Okay, whatever the reason for your father's visa rejection, that is not the concern of our UN office. However, before I end this interview, do you have any questions or anything more to tell me? When does the UN office tell me about the final decision on my application? I can't give you now any specific date, but sometime in the near future. You are going to receive a letter from us informing you about the final decision of the UN office on your application, whether you have been granted a refugee status in India or not.